Bruce handed in his notice on a Tuesday morning. 11 words in the email. His manager replied in 4. He appreciated the notice. That was it. Bruce spent the next 2 weeks doing something he hadn't done in almost 3 years. He worked without thinking about it. Not harder, not longer, just differently, cleaner. Like something had been removed from the process without him realizing it had been there the whole time. The report he'd been quietly dreading for 6 weeks took him 90 minutes. He sent it without reading it 4 times first. His manager's manager replied the same afternoon, said it was exactly what they needed. Bruce stared at that email for a moment. Then he went to lunch. Here's what nobody talks about when someone resigns. The 2 weeks that follow are some of the most productive of an employee's entire tenure. Output goes up, quality goes up, response times go down. The work that had been piling quietly for months gets cleared in days. And almost every person who has ever resigned has felt this. That strange unlocking, that sudden ease. Most people chalk it up to relief. The pressure is off. The decision is made. You're mentally already somewhere else. But that explanation is incomplete, because it misses the thing that was actually slowing you down before you quit. It wasn't the workload. It wasn't the manager. It wasn't even the role. It was the monitoring. Not surveillance in any dramatic sense. Just the constant ambient awareness that your output was being observed, evaluated, and recorded against a picture you couldn't fully see. Every email was a sample. Every meeting was a data point. Every question you asked or didn't ask was being added to a file somewhere, not aggressively, just continuously. And that awareness, so familiar you'd stopped noticing it, was costing you something every single day. Processing power. The quiet background task of managing perception while also doing the work. The moment Bruce resigned, that task stopped running. He wasn't being evaluated anymore. The file was effectively closed. Whatever picture they had of him was the one they were keeping. And with nothing left to manage, he could just do the work exactly the way he'd have done it if no one was watching. Which it turned out was considerably better than the way he'd been doing it for 3 years. There's a concept in psychology called ego depletion. The idea that self-regulation draws from a limited resource. Every time you monitor yourself, adjust yourself, perform a version of yourself slightly different from the one that would have acted naturally, you spend something. It refills, but it takes time. And in most corporate environments, that resource is being drawn from constantly. Not because companies intend harm, because evaluation is structural. It's built into how organizations track performance, allocate opportunity, and decide who gets what next. You can't opt out of being evaluated. You can only carry the weight of it until you no longer have to. The 2 weeks after resignation is when that weight disappears. And the cruel irony is obvious once you see it. The best version of Bruce at work showed up after he'd already decided to leave. The clearest thinking, the most direct communication, the least friction between what he understood and what he produced. His manager got 2 weeks of it. His next employer would get it from day 1. Until the monitoring started again. Until the file reopened. Until the background task came back online. This isn't a story about quitting. It's a story about what performance actually costs inside systems designed to measure it. The gap between what you're capable of and what you produce at work isn't usually about skill or effort. It's about everything running alongside the work that the work has to compete with. The impression management, the political positioning, the quiet self-editing that happens so automatically you don't experience it as effort anymore. You just experience it as Tuesday. Bruce started his new job on a Monday. He was good at it from the first week. His new manager mentioned it in passing, said he seemed unusually settled for someone so new. Bruce nodded and said thanks. He didn't explain that he'd been doing this exact level of work for years, that his last employer had seen 2 weeks of it, that it had taken handing in his notice to remember what it felt like to just do the job without the job watching him do it. The best work doesn't come after you quit because you stop caring. It comes because you finally stop performing.